There I was enjoying the new Assassin's Creed game when all of a sudden... This is why we can't have nice things anymore. This right here. Where do I start with this insanity? Courtney Craven certainly earned that name. The founder of gaming accessibility site Can I Play That? I don't know, can ya? Make sure it's on easy. Found one troubling issue with the game. Of course she did.
Of course!
Now I'll have to go on this website. Lord help me. Let's see here. I spent a half hour diving into freezing water searching aimlessly for a woman's comb. I spent 3 hours looking for a boat. I found nothing.
3 days later.
I realized that Ben and I were talking about two entirely different boats. I play Assassin's Creed Odyssey on exploration. Like a proper gaming journalist. Wayfinding in Assassin's Creed Valhalla feels like trying to drive on an interstate trip without Google Maps. Yes, in the dark ages before Google invented the map, people were resorting to divinations and goat sacrifices just to find their way around. Wayfinding isn't the only thing that is made unnecessarily difficult in Valhalla. I actually agree with this statement. I'm 10 hours into this game and every time I try to find a treasure, or God forbid one of those not really a side quest but kinda a side quest, I have to resort to dark magic. That damn bird is practically useless. And your raven has been stripped of all utility as well. Exactly. A review copy of Assassin's Creed Valhalla was provided by the developer/publisher. Well, that would explain why you play your games on easy. Because people who actually have to pay money for their games want to get as much as possible from their investment. People like her don't even buy your games, yet you cater to her. How about going and fixing the numerous bugs in your games and leave the lore text alone? I don't see Ubisoft apologizing for the bugs, but whatever, it's not like those affect more people who actually pay for your game. Instead, they would rather virtue signal with dumb stuff like this. Wait, hold on. I didn't include this in my Assassin's Creed impression piece, but... So I just wasted my time reading this rainbow head troll's review for nothing? This is a character description in the game. Horribly burned in a childhood accident, ear for wine is terrified someone will see her disfigured face. She relieves her fury with bursts of violence. It's absolutely unacceptable to talk about facial differences this way. Are you serious with this? And Ubisoft is actually taking her serious. Thank you so much for pointing this out. We apologize for unintentionally reinforcing ableism. Is that even a word? Through this language. We will remove this language in an upcoming update. Jesus Christ. Firstly, isn't this the opposite of representation? She is basically asking for certain people with certain disabilities to not be portrayed or written about in games. Look, no one is perfect. There are people who either sustain damage or who were born with certain disabilities or who are considered ugly, and we can't just not acknowledge their existence in media by refusing to describe them. And the text isn't even insulting, it's just stating a fact. She is horribly burned. Yep, true, she's not attractively burned. And yes, she is disfigured because she's burned. Also, it makes it even more awkward to look a certain way when our media is too afraid to portray or describe similar looking people. It's not enough that you look a certain way, now even games and movies avoid describing you. This year is indeed the final season. I'm actually arguing for representation in games. But this is actually the best argument for representation, which is for people not to feel excluded, right? This person is making a point that people with disfigurement shouldn't be depicted or talked about. Do you understand how discriminatory this sounds? Secondly, but even more important in my opinion, you can't write decent stories if you're constantly afraid of portraying people in a bad light. Walking on eggshells around certain people isn't a valid solution. You can't have everybody be perfect. That's how you get this abomination. People aren't perfect and often the best stories are centered around flawed characters. This is writing 101. And speaking of writing, imagine if George R.R. Martin followed the same logic as this Muppet does. Gone would be Tyrion and his complex character development because we can't have dwarves and we can't have prejudice against people who look different than us, not even in fantasy. Gone is Hodor because we can't portray mental disabilities. And finally, gone is the badass McGee himself, aka Sandor Clegane or the Hound, who is very similar to the character referenced here in both looks and attitude. He sustained a horrible wound on his face from being burnt by his brother for simply playing with one of his toys. This shaped his adulthood, developing a soft spot for people who he perceives as being in a similar situation. He also has an irrational, or maybe rational, fear of fire, a fear he is constantly being faced with. People love that character. He's the underdog, the brute with a heart of gold, who is battling his own demons, and we can sympathize with his struggles. But according to Miss Dustbuster 3000 over here, his very existence and description is unacceptable. I think I speak for every Sandor fan out there when I say, "Get stuffed!" Her logic, if we can call it that, is that some people would feel bad if their disability is portrayed and drawn attention towards. But wouldn't people feel bad if they were censored out of a story just for the way they look? You have a scar, you're done. Missing a finger, you're out. I know I would. This is how insane the progressives are. They reached the point where they're actually arguing against representing of people with disfigurement. And Ubisoft is actually planning on listening to her. The world has officially gone insane. I urge you, Ubisoft, don't censor your game just because of this clown. Think of the ramifications. If you can't show people with disabilities, and if you can't talk about their disfigurement in the way people would describe them back then your story suffers. What about dismemberment? That's not okay either, right? The main character has a scar on his or her neck. That has to go too, right? But it's part of the story. Who cares? It offended Mohawk Girl. Burning people in your video game is okay, but saying someone has a burnt face is too much. Do you understand why you need to take a hard stand against people like her? Oh, but now you already issued this dumbass statement, so if you go on second thought after careful consideration, sort of, the progressives will have a meltdown. The PR department really needs new management after this cock-up. And let me tell you, Valhalla doesn't need more vanilla. These characters are so soft and lacking in the savagery one expects from Vikings, it's getting comical. Half the time I'm forgetting I'm playing a Viking in the Dark Ages. This is why God of War felt a million times more Vikingish than this game. Stop catering to modern society when making a movie or game set in a different time or reality. Anyways, these are my thoughts on this mess. I'm going back to play what's left of the game before they censor the rest of it, and all I'm left with is the promotional pamphlet for the DLC, which just got cancelled because it offended someone, somewhere, somehow. Thank you for watching, please consider subscribing, and as always, have a nice day.